What happens when a father speaks 5 words on live television that freeze an entire studio in absolute silence? I wasn't there that day. The confession hung in the air like a detonation. Dr. Phil stopped mid-sentence, his hand raised in a gesture nobody had seen before. The cameras kept rolling, but time itself seemed to stop. What happened next would become one of the most unforgettable moments in Dr. Phil history. 48 hours earlier, the Henderson family had arrived at the studio with what producers thought was a standard case: communication breakdown, teenage rebellion, marital strain. Sarah Henderson, the mother, had written to the show describing how their 16-year-old daughter Emma had become withdrawn and distant. The father, Michael, had agreed to participate reluctantly. The intake interview had revealed nothing unusual. Family of 3. Middle-class background. No addiction, no abuse allegations, no obvious red flags. Just another family struggling with adolescence and connection. The production team scheduled them for a Tuesday taping. When they walked onto the stage that morning, everything appeared routine. Sarah sat on the right, Michael on the left, Emma between them. Dr. Phil opened with his characteristic directness. "So tell me, what's really going on in this family?" Sarah spoke first, describing Emma's withdrawal, her refusal to talk, her declining grades. Standard teenage stuff, the audience thought. Emma sat silent, arms crossed, staring at the floor. But Dr. Phil saw something the cameras hadn't captured yet. "Emma," Dr. Phil said, leaning forward, "you haven't said a word. But your body language is screaming. What do you need to say that nobody's hearing?" Emma's jaw tightened. Her mother reached toward her, but Emma pulled away. The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't typical teenage defiance. This was something deeper. "They don't remember," Emma finally whispered, so quietly the microphones barely caught it. "What don't they remember?" Dr. Phil asked gently. Emma looked at her father for the first time. The day it happened. The day everything changed. Michael's face went pale. Sarah looked confused. Dr. Phil noticed the father's reaction immediately. "Stop the tape." The words cut through the studio like a blade. Producers looked at each other in confusion. Dr. Phil never stopped mid-taping unless something was seriously wrong. The audience fell into complete silence. Dr. Phil stood up and walked to the edge of the stage, addressing his production team directly. "I need everybody to take a breath. Whatever's about to happen here, we need to handle it right." He turned back to the family. "Michael, do you know what she's talking about?" Michael's hands were shaking. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. 15 seconds of silence that felt like an hour. "I wasn't there that day." 5 words. The studio went completely silent. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Emma's eyes filled with tears. The audience sat frozen, understanding that they were witnessing something profound but not yet knowing what. Dr. Phil sat back down slowly. His voice dropped to a tone the crew had rarely heard. No performance, no camera awareness, just pure human connection. "Michael, I need you to tell me what day we're talking about." Michael's voice broke. "Her championship game. 3 years ago. She was the starting pitcher. I promised I'd be there." "But you weren't," Dr. Phil said quietly. "I was at a work conference in Chicago. I told myself it was important. That there would be other games." But what Michael didn't know was that Emma had pitched a perfect game that day, and nobody from her family had been there to see it. Sarah gasped. "What? Michael, you told me you went. You said you left the conference early." "I lied," Michael whispered. "I stayed for the cocktail reception. I stayed to network. I chose my career over my daughter." Emma finally spoke, her voice steady despite the tears. "I threw the game of my life. 9 innings. Not a single hit. The scouts were there. The college recruiters. My teammates carried me off the field. And when I looked in the stands for you, Dad, you weren't there." Dr. Phil leaned back, processing. The camera captured the moment his expression shifted from professional therapist to something deeper, a father himself, understanding the weight of what had just been confessed. Michael, look at me. Dr. Phil's voice was firm but not harsh. Do you understand what you just told this young woman? I ruined everything, Michael said, his voice barely audible. No, Dr. Phil corrected. You made a choice. And that choice told your daughter something. What did it tell her, Emma? Emma looked at her father. That I wasn't worth choosing. That his job mattered more than me. That I wasn't important enough. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Sarah was crying now. Michael, why didn't you tell me? Why did you lie for 3 years? Because I was ashamed, Michael said. Because I knew what I'd done. And every day since then, I've watched her pull away from me, and I knew it was my fault. I just didn't know how to fix it. Dr. Phil stood up again. Hold on. He walked to the edge of the stage and spoke to someone off camera. Bring me the envelope. A production assistant appeared with a sealed manila envelope. Dr. Phil held it for a moment, then handed it to Michael. Before you came here today, our team did something. Emma, you gave us permission to contact your old coach. Open it, Michael. Michael's hands shook as he tore open the envelope. Inside were photographs, Emma on the pitcher's mound mid-throw. Emma being lifted by her teammates. Emma holding the trophy. And a letter. Read it out loud, Dr. Phil instructed gently. Michael's voice cracked as he read. To whom it may concern. Emma Henderson pitched the most remarkable game I've witnessed in 30 years of coaching. More impressive than her athletic ability was her grace under pressure. When I asked her who she wanted to dedicate the win to, she said my dad, even though he couldn't be here. That's the kind of person she is. Someone worth showing up for. Coach Martinez. The studio erupted in emotion. The audience was openly crying. Sarah reached for Emma's hand. And Michael sat holding the photographs, finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd lost. Dr. Phil sat down again, his voice softer now. Michael, here's what I need you to understand. You can't get that day back. You can't pitch that perfect game with her. But you can choose what happens next. I don't know how to fix this, Michael said. You can't fix it, Dr. Phil replied. You can only be honest about it. Emma, what do you need from your father? Emma looked at Michael directly for the first time in years. I need him to stop pretending it didn't matter. I need him to acknowledge that it broke something between us. And I need to know that if I ever do something important again, he'll choose me. But what nobody expected was what Dr. Phil did next. Dr. Phil stood and addressed the entire studio. I'm going to do something we don't typically do. I'm going to ask our audience and our crew to give this family some privacy. If you're willing, I'd like everyone to step out for 10 minutes while this family talks without cameras. The audience filed out quietly. The crew lowered their cameras. Dr. Phil walked the family to a private room backstage. For 10 minutes, no footage was recorded. No microphones captured the conversation. When they returned to the stage, something had shifted. Michael and Emma were sitting closer. Not touching, but the wall between them had lowered slightly. Dr. Phil addressed the audience that had returned. I want to tell you what I just told this family backstage. Healing doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in 1,000 small choices to show up, to be honest, to choose connection over comfort. He turned to Michael. Here's your homework. Every week, I want you to ask Emma one question. What's important to you this week? And whatever she says, a test, a game, a conversation with a friend, you show up for it. Not physically necessarily, but emotionally. You engage. You choose her. Michael nodded, tears streaming down his face. I will. I promise. Promises are cheap. Dr. Phil said bluntly. Presence is everything. Don't promise her. Show her. Dr. Phil then pulled out a small card from his jacket pocket. He handed it to Emma. This is the number for a family therapist I trust. You three have work to do that goes beyond this stage. The real healing starts when the cameras stop. He addressed the audience one final time. What you witnessed today isn't about perfection. It's about truth. This father didn't show up when it mattered most. But he showed up today. And that's where healing begins, with the courage to admit what you've broken and the commitment to rebuild it piece by piece. The impact of that confession would extend far beyond the Henderson family. After the episode aired, the Dr. Phil show received over 50,000 messages from viewers. Fathers writing to say they'd missed their kids' moments. Adult children describing the games, recitals, and graduations their parents had skipped. The conversation had opened a wound in American family culture. More significantly, Emma's perfect game video, recorded by the school, went viral. Sports networks picked it up. The story of the girl who pitched brilliantly while her father chose work became a national conversation about parenting, presence, and priorities. Michael and Emma appeared on the show 6 months later for a follow-up. The transformation was visible. They sat side by side, not distant. Michael reported that he had attended every single one of Emma's events since that day. Softball games, school presentations, even a poetry reading she'd been nervous about. But the most powerful moment came when Emma spoke. Dr. Phil asked me backstage that day what I really wanted, Emma said. And I told him, I wanted my dad back. Not the dad who makes promises. The dad who shows up. She turned to Michael. And you have. You've been there. Every time. Dr. Phil nodded. This is what accountability looks like. Not perfection. Presence. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The envelope with the photographs now sits framed in the Henderson living room. Not as a reminder of pain, but as a testament to what honest confrontation can create. The day everything changed wasn't the day of the perfect game. It was the day Michael finally told the truth about missing it. Dr. Phil's closing words that day had resonated beyond the studio. Your kids don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be present. They need you to choose them, over and over again, even when, especially when, it's inconvenient. The father who wasn't there that day became the father who showed up every day after. And that made all the difference. 3 years after the episode aired, the ripple effects were still being felt. Emma had received a full athletic scholarship to UCLA, where she continued pitching. But more importantly, Michael had become her biggest supporter, attending every home game, video calling during away games, and building a relationship that transcended sports. The turning point came during Emma's first college championship game. As she walked to the mound for the final inning, she looked into the stands. Michael was there, holding a sign that simply read, "I choose you." Emma later said that moment healed more than any therapy session ever could. Sarah, who had been devastated by Michael's deception, found her own healing through the process. I realized I had been enabling his absence, she told Dr. Phil in a follow-up call. I made excuses for him because it was easier than confronting the truth. We both had to change. The episode became required viewing in family therapy programs across the country. Therapists reported using the Henderson family's story to illustrate the concept of ambiguous loss, the grief children feel when parents are physically present but emotionally absent. The phrase, "I wasn't there that day," became shorthand in therapeutic circles for parental absence and its lasting impact. Dr. Phil himself reflected on the episode in later interviews. Some moments in this work stay with you. Michael's confession was one of them. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. And honesty is where all real change begins. The card Dr. Phil handed Emma that day, with the family therapist's number, had been used. The Hendersons attended weekly sessions for 18 months. They learned communication tools, rebuilt trust, and created new family rituals that prioritized presence over productivity. But perhaps the most unexpected outcome was how Michael's career changed. He left his corporate job 6 months after the Dr. Phil appearance and started consulting from home. I realized that the ladder I was climbing was leaning against the wrong wall, he explained. I was building a career at the expense of my family. The day I made that choice, I became the father I should have been all along. The photographs from the envelope now travel with Emma to every game. She keeps them in her equipment bag as a reminder, not of what was lost, but of what was rebuilt through courage and honesty. And on the anniversary of that perfect game each year, Michael sends Emma a text that simply says, "I choose you today. I choose you tomorrow. I choose you always." That's the legacy of the day everything changed. The final chapter of this story came 5 years after the original episode. Emma graduated from UCLA with honors, both academically and athletically. At her graduation, she did something unexpected. She invited Dr. Phil to attend. He sat in the audience next to Michael and Sarah, watching as Emma walked across the stage. In her valedictorian speech, Emma spoke about second chances and the courage it takes to rebuild broken things. She never mentioned the Dr. Phil episode by name, but everyone who knew the story understood what she was saying. After the ceremony, Dr. Phil pulled Michael aside. "You did it," he said simply. "You showed up when it mattered." Michael's response said everything. "I show up every day now. That's what fathers do." The envelope, the photographs, the confession, they had all led to this moment. A daughter who believed in second chances because her father had proven that change was possible. A family rebuilt through honesty, therapy, and the simple act of choosing presence over everything else. Dr. Phil's lesson had come full circle. Healing doesn't happen in a single moment on television. It happens in 1,000 small choices made over years, when nobody's watching, when the cameras are off, when all that matters is showing up for the people you love.